So I just finished watching Netflix's live adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, I'm unsure if I've mentioned this on my channel before, but I am a huge Avatar fan. I remember when this show was initially airing nearly 20 years ago, and it was one of my first introductions to an animated show that had like a structure to it, an overall plot. Everything before that was just, it's an episode by episode basis. The story didn't matter. You could pick it up, you could watch one episode and then skip like 6 episodes and you wouldn't be missing anything. But Avatar was my first show that I watched where if you missed an episode, you were missing some character growth or missing some plot. And needless to say, just from the first episode of The Last Airbender, I was hooked, For nearly 20 years, when talking about near perfect shows, Avatar is always the first one that comes to my head. From the lovable protagonist of Team Avatar to even some amazing villains in, people like Azula. It has lessons, it has laughs, and it has moments that can bring you to tears. This animated series had it all. And I think it might be the reason why this show still resonates with me all these years later. Hell, my family and I love this show so much that we have named, between all of us, we've named 4 animals after characters from this show. We had a cat about 10 years ago, which we named Katara, and even more recently, I got 2 cats and named them Toph and May, and my brother got a cat and even named his cat Zuko. Now, I'm telling you all of this just so you know how much this show means to me. Now let me answer some basic questions for all of you real quick. First, my favorite character is Toph. Earthbending is the strongest form of bending, and no, you cannot convince me otherwise. Now, back to the topic at hand. I was a little iffy about this live-action adaptation ever since what that man did. That right there is the one I refer to as M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong. The director of that abysmal attempt, if you can even call it an attempt of an adaptation. I mean, for the love of God, he changed the name of the main characters. Ong, are you serious? Okay, alright. I hate this movie. I hated this movie with a passion. I did even when it came out about 14 years ago. There was nothing redeeming about this movie. So many of the best parts from book 1 were removed. No. Alright. We're done. There was no Last Airbender movie. Jokes aside, that really soured any live-action adaptations for me. Even to this day, if I see something as an adaptation of an animated show, or a movie, or an anime, I always tread carefully, because the track record isn't great. So, let me get into my thoughts about this live-action Avatar. I stayed away from most of the news about this show. I didn't watch any of the trailers, and I really only saw a few stills of the people playing the beloved characters. I didn't read any headlines about what may or may not be in the show. I just stayed away from all of that because I wanted to go in with just my expectation. And that's exactly what I did. Now, I stayed up until midnight on Thursday when this show did drop, just so I could watch the first episode. And, well, I was quite surprised. Oh, I guess this is also the part of the video where I should mention that there will be spoilers for the show. So if you don't want to be spoiled, pause here, watch the show, and then come back. So let's start off with episode 1. Now, episode 1, it starts immediately showing us some action, which, again, was quite a surprise to me. It was different to the start of the animated show. Already some fast-paced action, compared to the slow start of Sokka and Katara fishing from the animated one. Now, as I was watching, I was actually pleasantly surprised with the CGI. The bending looked good, it was fast-paced, the visuals looked good, and I really thought to myself, so far so good. Now, here's the thing. I was also a little confused because I had no idea who these opening characters might be. I thought potentially it could be Haru and his dad trying to run away from the firebenders, but that didn't make sense. But my wondering was cut short when, and these are, again, my legit notes that I typed when I was watching, they fucking killed the guy. Alright? This legit shocked me, as in the show, they didn't show any on-screen deaths. Alright? The closest we got, I believe, to someone being confirmed dead was Jet, I believe, in book 2 of the animated show, where he's like, oh, I'll be okay, and as they're walking away, Toph is like, he's lying or whatever, basically confirming he's dying. That's like the closest we got to a confirmed on-screen death in the original show. But here we are, about 4 minutes in, and we see just a group of people. No, we just see him get burnt to a crisp, and that's something. So many people get burnt to a crisp in this show. It's actually insane. Now, I'm gonna break away from the show real quick to just kind of say something. And this is something I've been saying for like the past 5 to 9 years. It really is hard for me to pinpoint. But I always thought that it would be dope for another version of Avatar to be made, but age it up a little bit. Add some more violence, add some swearing, and make it for people who are grown up now that watched it back when we were kids. And it was at this moment when we see the Fire Lord at the time kill this guy, where I thought to myself, this might be the adaptation I've been wanting. In fact, later in the episode, we do get someone actually swearing, saying something along the lines of, where did they drag our asses to? Or something. And that's kind of when it was confirmed for me. So here I am, I continue to watch the show in amazement, as the show, it genuinely impressed me in this first episode. And I love that they kept cutting back to 100 years ago, and then back to present day, then 100 years ago. It just gave you a better understanding of what was going on. It gave you a better grasp of the full story. That was one of the changes I actually really liked about this show. It just gave some context for some of the stuff that was happening. You know, they touched on moments like the monks in the Southern Air Temple and their relationship to Aang, which I know they did in the animated series, but not to this degree. We didn't get to see kind of the everyday life that was going on, at least to the best of my memory. It's been a couple years since I've sat down and actually watched this show. But yeah, they also touched on like the death of Iroh's son, Lu Ten, which we don't really get to see until much later on in the animated show. So a lot of context was added, and I honestly thought it benefited the story quite a bit. Now, speaking of one of these flashbacks, there was this scene where the Firebenders were wiping out the Airbenders. We all knew it was coming if you've seen the animated series. We knew the Airbenders weren't going to make it. That's why it's called Avatar: The Last Airbender. But there was this moment where one of the Airbending masters, I don't know if she had a name, but she had like this tornado thing going off, fighting off Firebenders, and one of them just stood there and just shoots fire into it, turning it into a fucking fire tornado. That was a scene I wasn't expecting, and I loved it. It was just, it blew my mind. I was like, they are going over the top here. Now, I did have a single complaint about the Airbender fight, the Airbender and Firebender fight. And it's the fact that they didn't put any respect on Monk Gyatso. Alright? In the animated show, you can see just how many Firebenders this badass killed, alright? A room full. But in live action, he couldn't even take out 4. And it was kind of, it made me sad. They didn't put respect on his name. All right? Possibly one of the greatest airbenders to ever live. They didn't put any respect on his name. They were just like, he couldn't fight them off. He took out a room. He took out a room full. All right? That actually made me mad. It irritated me a little bit that we didn't get to see the full fighting prowess of Monk Gyatso. Now, while the flashbacks were changes that I enjoyed, there were also some changes that left me questioning. Continuing from the Monk Gyatso part, when Aang first discovers the skeleton of Gyatso in this adaptation, it isn't Katara or Sokka that snaps him out of his avatar state. It was Gyatso. And I had a really weird feeling watching this. Like, the reason it worked previously, at least from my thinking, was the fact that, you know, it showed that these 3 are really all they have. They need to stick together, and they need to be at one another's side. That was something in the animated version. Katara snaps him out of this avatar state after he discovers the skeleton. But again, it wasn't until a few episodes into the live action adaptation that I kind of understood what they were going for. You see, the overarching story, the overarching thing for Aang here in this adaptation is the fact that all of his predecessors are telling him that he needs to be an avatar alone. He can't rely on anyone. And maybe that's where this ties in. But again, it just goes against what Avatar was, in my opinion. Like, this wasn't a change I enjoyed. Like, the whole original show was the bonds of the gang make with one another. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but it didn't sit right with me. Another change I really enjoyed was the fact that they gave Jet a less important role. I absolutely hate Jet. Like, he's legit one of my least favorite characters in this show. And it was something that Mr. Shamalama Ding Dong did right. Not including him in the movie. Alright, I don't like him. Never have, never will. Now, it was when Jet was introduced that they combined a few kind of plot points together. You see, Jet was in Omashu with couple other few key players later on. Namely, you got Boomy and then the Mechanist and Teo, which is the Mechanist's son. They come back later on with prominent roles towards the end of the series. Now, these three plot points all happened at the same time. You know, Jet is still fighting Firebenders, the Mechanist is still working with the Fire Nation, and Boomy is still Boomy. Now, I understand why they changed the story here, seeing as they only had 8 episodes to work with, but I felt like it could have been done better, or at least differently. You know, more focus on Boomy would have been nice. Now, I'm conflicted on Jet. One thing the animated series did right was just showing what life in the Fire Nation, or it showed that life in the Fire Nation wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, right? That's what it showed with Jet's episodes. In fact, the episodes with Jet was Jet trying to bomb a Fire Nation village just for being Fire Nation. So shoving him into the Omashu arc was kind of weird, in my opinion. But again, when he first appeared, I wasn't sure if he was supposed to be Jet or Haru. Now, spoiler alert, Haru didn't appear in this show at all. They cut those characters out of the show. Anyway, I felt like the Mechanist actually did kind of fit in Omashu. I don't really have any complaints with them putting them there. In fact, I think it worked better. You know, it was a shame about them skipping the Southern Air Temple, and actually they did skip a few things here. Again, I just mentioned, but we didn't get to see Haru or the Fire Nation labor camps. We didn't get to see the Great Divide people. That is actually one of my favorite episodes. It's a real fun filler episode. But they also combined just a bunch of other plot points together. Another one being the Winter Solstice episodes. They combined those episodes with the episodes of June hunting them down. But for some reason in this adaptation, June captures Aang at Roku's temple? I was kind of confused about that. I mean, it was cool seeing June in the show. That was another thing Mr. Ding Dong skipped out on. Fucking, I'm 14 years and I still dislike you. I almost forgot. We also actually got to see Kyoshi Island, which was cool. And we got to see how good of a fighter Sokka is during the attempted raid of the Fire Nation on Kyoshi Island. And the Kyoshi warrior, I really liked it. I thought they did it well. Anyway, we are kind of towards the end of the season now, and I think they pulled it off pretty well. And I actually wrote in my notes, there is only one thing I ask for at the final episode. When Zhao kills the moon spirits, I need Iroh to say, whatever you do to that spirit, I will unleash on you tenfold, and then go ham. And guess what? He says it. It was cool.
Zhao, whatever you do to that spirit, I'll unleash on you tenfold!
The reason I wrote this in my notes is because we did miss out on another great line from the animated show, where it's when Zuko was saving Iroh from being captured by some earthbenders, and one of the earthbenders says something along the lines of like, you're outnumbered, and then Iroh just turns to him and replies, yeah, well, you're outskilled, like the badass Iroh is. I love him. There's a reason he's my second favorite character in this show. Now, I don't know if the final episode was rushed towards the end of development, but there was some very clunky CGI. Like watch this. I don't know. It just doesn't look right. The movements of Katara and Aang just look unnatural as they're kind of like slowly vaulting off of the ship to jump onto. It was just weird. It was just weird. It didn't look good. It didn't look good. I don't know. There were a lot of things like this in the final episode. If I remember, I'll put some examples up on screen here. But there were quite a few examples. I don't know. There was a lot of bad CGI that I kind of caught in this final episode. The final fight was really well done, though. It really gave a sense of despair that the people were probably feeling like they're fighting for their lives here. They don't want to be wiped out, and it comes across. The despair comes across. Now, when Zhao kills the moon spirit, you know, Iroh goes ham, then Aang goes ham, and the day is saved. And then end of season. Or is it? No, they then show what Azula was up to. Oh, yeah, that's something I forgot to mention. Azula appeared a bunch in this season, which was great. It was actually very nice to kind of see her character growth starting this early. But yeah, she conquered Omashu, setting up a season 2. I actually really enjoyed Azula being more prominent in this show, as she wasn't really introduced until season 2, book 2, in the animated series. Yeah, that's kind of how this season ends, just a kind of a quick wrap up there. The final fight was great. Yeah, that was kind of my quick review of the season. Something new I wanted to try out. But yeah, my overall consensus, the show was good. The show was good. It didn't match the magic that the animated series gave me way back when. And maybe that's just because I already knew the story, I knew what was going to happen. Or maybe it just wasn't as good. I don't know. I really enjoyed the animated series. If you enjoyed the animated series, you will probably enjoy this show. And if you haven't watched Avatar at all, you will still probably enjoy this show. Also, go watch the animated series. All 3 seasons are on Netflix right now. Anyways, that's my video. That's my review on Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you enjoyed, let me know, or whatever. If you want to see me do something like this again, give me some recommendations in the comments down below. Anyway, it's a good show. Good show. Goodbye.